I'm gonna get ready while I'm talking. I have not had a lot of time to make videos, but that does not mean I haven't been reading. I have a crazy long commute for work. And so I read on the train, and I like it because I used to drive that distance, and it really sucked because at the time I didn't live near a metro line, and that sucked because I had to drive the whole time, risk of like car crashes because of crazy traffic, blah blah, the whole thing. But anyway, now I just sit on the train and I read, so I don't really mind that. It's a long commute most days. Anyway, so I've been reading, and I've read 4 books since I last posted anything, which makes sense because I kind of feel like it's been like 3 or 4 months. But anyway, I entered like a mental space where I was like, I want to read more about women who are very in tune with themselves and their instincts, and specifically those things in relation to the world around them. And I know that's a very niche thing. And also, I was just kind of like, I want to be in women's heads. Like, I want to be in women's brains right now. And so I sought out materials that did that. So um, first I read My Year of Rest and Relaxation. Oh my God, I love this book. And I'm just going to give a brief overview of like what I enjoyed about each book, and then I might do detailed videos separately. Haven't decided yet, not too sure. But anyway, I loved this book so much. And then I read Rebecca by Daphne du Maurier, but I don't have a physical copy of that book because it was a library book, and I returned it because that's what you do. You return your library books, okay? Share the knowledge. So I don't have a copy of that. While I'm glad I read it because that was on my to-read list for a while, it was not quite for me, not because of the book, not because of anything the author did, just like my own attention span and my own personal reading style. I also was in a very chaotic time in my life when I started reading it, so that made it harder for me to dedicate time to the book, so that probably had an impact as well in my enjoyment of the book. Next, Handmaid's Tale. I ate that up. Gobbled it up. Then, let me cover this. Of course, the Testaments following The Handmaid's Tale. And this actually is from my library, and I have to return it soon. So, yeah. So, I think first I'm going to talk about Rebecca, because I don't have a physical book with me, and so that will make it difficult for me to remember to talk about it later if I don't talk about it now. So yeah, and of course, I have, you guys can't see this, but like I have a candle over there. I'm off work today because like people are coming to work on my apartment, which sucks because I'm like, oh, I had to take off work, but also I'm grateful people were able to come out later. And in the meantime, I just like have my nice candle over there, and I love it because I love candles. I bought myself some spontaneous flowers. They're over there on the nightstand. I have some iced coffee. So I'm just enjoying being alive today and like the little things. So yeah, so I guess let's get into it. So Rebecca by Daphne du Maurier. That is a book that in theory I would have loved, but I forgot some things about myself as a reader that impacted my enjoyment of it. I do encourage other people to read it, however. So for me personally, with my my reading preferences and my reading tendencies, I would have enjoyed it more as like a special series, or even like a long movie conducted as like a period piece. But for me in particular, while I enjoyed it as a book, it just wasn't the kind of book I typically read. I found that with certain English literature, actually most English literature, a big value is placed on describing the environment, and the environment becomes a character in a way. And while I can appreciate that, that stylistically I think is a really cool thing, for me, that can kind of go either way as far as like maintaining my attention. Because if I've read about like the house for, you know, a house or an estate for 3 pages. Eventually I'm like, okay, we get it. And that's bad on my part, because then I'm missing things, right? Because if someone's writing about something so much, it's important. And there's things that are important that I'm not getting. So that's kind of on me. But yeah. But anyway, basically the point is that it's this girl, and she's 20, and she's described as like a young woman. They kind of refer to her as a child very frequently, which is kind of creepy because a rich old man marries her, right? And basically, prior to marrying her, she's like with this really grumpy old lady who's a gossip. And like her job, apparently this was a job back in the day, her job was to be this old lady's friend. And like the old lady in return would like teach her how to conduct herself and behave in society. So I'm like, okay, definitely different world. Wish I could get paid to be somebody's friend. But yeah. So that's basically the whole situation. And like, she's not making bank, but like she's taken care of, and she has to do that because her family has passed. She doesn't really have anybody, and given the circumstances of society at the time, it's good that that's the position she's in. But anyway, this like infamous like wealthy bachelor is in the vacation spot that she's in with the old lady. He takes a liking to her. They frequently go on drives, etc. And like he finds her innocence refreshing because he has a dark past because he's a widow. Um, you can kind of guess what happened. I'm not gonna say because spoilers, but like we all pick up on the vibes. And so basically the whole idea is that the widow's ghost, well, the dead wife, the dead wife's ghost basically is perceived to be like just permeating the halls of the estate, like just everywhere she turns around, it's Rebecca, 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 right? This woman she's never met that she can't live up to. And so we also like through this paranoia that develops, it also touches on societal expectations, but also the mental experience that our young main character is going through. Because I mean, how do you compete with a dead woman? You can't. You just can't. So she's going through her own insecurities. And everyone's like, oh, da da da. Because no one's going to speak ill of the dead. And was she a lovely lady? Probably. But she's just kind of going through a lot because she doesn't have any family. The whole time she's like, oh, I hope I didn't make a mistake, like that mean old lady said. Because if I did, there's nothing for me to go back to. Like, that's a lot for anyone, especially a 20-year-old, okay? Um, and also, let's not forget the power imbalance. She has nothing, no money, no family. She's 20 years old. People literally refer to her as a child, which also gross, icky. But which 20 is not a child, but also when you compare it to the fact he's this old man who's got money. And aside from the money he has, which he does have, don't get me wrong, he also has a lot of power in the community. So there's a big imbalance there. Anyway, long story short, it's very interesting. Even though it sounds a little spooky, I consider it more of a summer read because of the way like the gardens are described, and they talk about like the sea very frequently. Yeah, so it's worth a look. It's very interesting. And then the next thing I want to talk about, I devoured this in like 3 days. I mean, I could read it in one day, but I had things I had to do, unfortunately. But My Year of Rest and Relaxation by Ottessa Moshfegh. I won't lie, I'm sorry. I did not look up how to pronounce that last name, and I'm pretty certain I did not pronounce it correctly. So I'm gonna go back after this video and try to learn. So yeah, so this book, I would describe it as like, if you liked The Bell Jar, because of how it delved into like the slow progression or a fast progression, depending on how you view it, of like descent into mental illness and like the raw honesty of the narrator. If you enjoyed that in The Bell Jar, you will enjoy it in this. But it's like that amped up times 20,000. And don't get confused by the cover. This cover would have you think like, oh, it's very old timey, like, etc., etc. No, this takes place in, I believe, the year 2000. Let me look real quick. Yeah, it starts in the year 2000, and it's crazy because for me, I I was very very young in the year 2000. Like I don't remember much. But there's little things that references where I'm like, "Oh, I do think I remember like seeing the grown-ups do that in magazines or like cuz she's an adult in the story." Or like she'll reference certain like brands or certain historical events. Um and yeah, like her shitty ex was in one pretty groundbreaking historical event in the United States. Um Towards the end of the book, no spoilers, but if you know history and you know years, how years work, you can probably guess. But anyway, that was a spoiler. I'm sorry. But he's just such a butthole that I'm just he needed to go. And that sounds heartless, but if you read the book, you'll be like, good riddance. Anyway, I appreciated it because of its raw honesty. I liked the author's writing style. And I feel like this touched on a unique, well, not a unique experience, but the writing of it was unique in that a lot of times people who have not experienced depression will will kind of view it as like, oh, the person wants to, you know, die. However, that's not what it is, right? It's never most people, and I'm not a mental health expert. This is just like what I've gathered from conversations with people, what I've gathered from, research I've read. Most people, it's not that they want to die, it's that they feel like they need a break. Like they just wish they could rest for a little while. Um, which is so heartbreaking. And so this book basically writes about that, where this woman decides that she needs a break. She's over it. She needs a break. She's got so many things going on. Like she's having difficulty connecting with her loved ones. She doesn't word it that way, but like, yeah, you can definitely pick up on it, especially in regards to how she treats her best friend. And so she decides she's going to, oh, she's also involved with like the art scene, right? So she decides she wants to sleep for, oh, and she falls into pill addiction. That's not a spoiler. That's just like a key point in the movie that I need to bring up. But she basically decides she wants to sleep for a year to rest, and then she's just going to start anew. But of course, you can't just sleep for a year. Like you need to drink and eat and all that. So she contacts this like very controversial art person, and he agrees. Like she basically plans out a way for like a whole year. Like she'll dose her meds so that she's like sleeps for 3 days, and when she wakes up, he's not there, but like he's left a pizza for her, and he's allowed to like film the whole experience as an art project. And so the whole time you're like, oh, don't do it, don't do it. And maybe she does, maybe she doesn't. I'm not gonna say it, but sorry, I'm trying to focus. But it's definitely an interesting read. I enjoyed the ending a lot. Um, yeah, I got really worried. This book was very fascinating, and it touched on a lot of important things from the 2000s, specifically related to like diet culture, lack of mental health support. I also connected to it because she's like fresh out of college, and while I'm not fresh out of, and like, things aren't going how she thought they would fresh out of college. While I'm not fresh out of college, I am in my 20s, and this life is not what I pictured, nor what I was told to expect. So, it's very fascinating, and I felt like I saw parts of myself in her, and especially as a woman in my 20s, and I'm like, yeah, I enjoyed that. So definitely recommend that. Let me do these bottom lashes, I'm sorry. And then we'll talk about Handmaid's Tale. Oh. And remember, it's always okay for your mascara to be messy, because you can just correct it with some micellar water and a Q-tip later. That's what I'm gonna do. You just apply it messy and then clean it up how you want it to look. Plus, this camera is blurry. You can't see anyway. Like, you can't see how it looks, really. Okay. The Handmaid's Tale. I guess I can put it over here. I'm not going to talk too much about The Handmaid's Tale because it is extremely popular right now. So most people kind of understand at least the premise, and it's also a TV show. While I have not seen the show, I actually intentionally have not watched the show over several years. Or I don't know how long it's been filming, but it feels like several years. But I've intentionally not been watching it, even though it interests me, because I wanted to read the books first. And haha. Okay. And so, oh, what's that? I think that's lotion. So I started reading it, and The Handmaid's Tale is from the perspective of a handmaid, right? And so handmaids' jobs in this dystopian world. One thing I want to say is Margaret Atwood in The Handmaid's Tale and the Testaments never wrote about anything that hadn't already happened in a country, okay? So it may not have been this country where some things happen, or it may have just in a different time, right? But her whole point with these books was people can't